Welcome back to the Witchy Web We Weave. I'm Alex.
I'm Alara.
And today we're gonna be very briefly touching on chakras.
Yes, chakras is something that has a lot of depth to it because each chakra point that we're about to talk about has its own correspondences for stone, sound, taste, color, yada yada yada, so on and so forth. So this one is really just a basic overview of what chakras are, a little very tiny taste of maybe some history, talking about the fact that there are 7 and so on and so forth. So later in the future, you'll probably be seeing individual videos come out where we'll be taking a look at one chakra at a time, going more in depth into the actual correspondences for each of those.
Mm-hmm. This is gonna be kind of like a 3-part mini though, because we're talking about them today. We have another video explaining an item I happen to own, and then we have our bowl, which we'll get to. No, not our bowl, our dough. We have a dough video. We're not gonna get into that, but it's part of this, so stay tuned.
Yes, which, if nothing else, I would highly suggest that you check out, after you watch this, whenever it comes out, check out our pendulum video that we're going to be releasing in
the next few weeks.
Yeah, a few weeks. Because in that one, there's going to be a really cool part for aura reading and how to do that with a chakra generator.
Yep.
So anyway, let's get to the meat of all of this. We're talking about chakras. Chakras is something that has been around for literally thousands of years. Like some of the earliest writings associated with chakras is going back to like 1500 BC. So BC, before Common Era.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking at least 3,000 years. Because it was written about in one of the earlier texts in India. I think it's called the Vedas text, Vedas.
Sounds kind of familiar.
But this is generally a way of thinking about energy that is Eastern-centric. So it was written about in Sanskrit. It's very common in Eastern practices. Specifically, it's huge in India.
Originated, correct?
Yes, it originated in India. It is still very prominent and very important within Hindu and certain Buddhist religions. And I think even if you are not a follower of an Eastern religion, I think that chakras is still something that's very interesting and very important to think about, because I think that there's a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? I think
there's a lot to it. I mean,
there's a lot to it, but I think that
spiritual, but there's also physical ramifications. So I think it really does apply to a lot of stuff, especially if anyone follows yoga.
Yes.
That's something very important with that practice, which a lot of people, and back a few videos ago, we had talked about doing chakra stuff, and I was just I'd been a little hesitant to do all this because we understand that this is from the East, and we don't want to be stepping on toes, and we're not saying we're, the be-all, end-all of information here.
No, we're not experts, but we are both, we really like chakras. We have worked a little bit with yoga and energy work, and we know it has there's some valid stuff to it. It's a very potent way of working with it, and we want to approach it in a way that is respectful, because we know that it is a huge part of other people's religion and their culture and their way of life, so we want to be respectful of that, while still providing you with some information. And I think that's why you're really hesitant about it.
Yeah, it happens, especially because we're white Americans,
yes.
I've unfortunately, there have been people that feel that we shouldn't even practice yoga over here because it is not, for the most part, it is not a sacral spiritual thing in America. It is a way of exercise. I mean, I know people that, that do practice with it. It is kind of their physical meditation almost.
Yes.
But
actually, yoga is actually one of the ways that I am actually able to meditate, because I'm not very good at doing it just regularly sitting and calming the mind. My brain doesn't work very well that way. Yoga is actually one of the ways that I've actually been able to meditate the easiest.
Mm-hmm.
It's been the most natural, I guess, way of meditation for me. But when we're talking about chakra systems, because we are only looking at a very basic overview,
Very basic. If you
very
really want
basic.
information, get books, get studying some stuff.
Like this is a topic that you can go down the rabbit hole as deep as you want. There are so many sources and so many ways that this bleeds into so many different areas and so many different ways of your life and the way of your body, of your mentality, of your, like, it connects to so many different planes of your own existence and different things within the world, that you can almost go any route that you want to with it in regards to research and learning.
And honestly, like, a lot of my family has done yoga. My sister was very into this, along with her Reiki stuff, a lot of just energy healing
and
stuff.
And she was doing that for health reasons, because she has a lot of health problems.
And that did help her a lot for a minute. But I think the reason, like, I got into it all of a sudden, and it happened, it was kind of like runes for me with my generator that we're going to explain in another video. It just kind of worked for me in that sense. And I can kind of tell when things are kind of up with people. Like, if I know people well enough, I can't just go on and I can't go walking down the street being like, your heart chakra's having problems. Like, no, I don't got that kind of sense. But if I know you and I kind of see what's going on, I can kind of pinpoint what's having some difficulties. So if I didn't do that, I think I could still respect it, but I probably wouldn't work with it if I didn't have a connection with it, quite honestly.
I think that for me, with chakras, I think it's the fact that I'm a little bit more in tune with people's energy. Just because I kind of consider myself to be an empath because I am so incredibly sensitive to energy in general. Like, that's really why I don't go to social events. I don't spend a lot of time with other people. I am so sensitive that it's easy for me to get overwhelmed by other people's energy and what's going on with them. So working with chakras, working with energy in this kind of overall sense of doing it was a way for me to understand my own energy flow throughout my body, as well as just the way that energy flows in general throughout a person's body. And so I think it was from the very get-go with me, because energy is something that I'm so attuned with, that it started out being very spiritual for me. I automatically associate energy, just the feeling of energy, with something higher than myself. I see it as more of a universal energy, a cyclical thing. So I think from the very beginning, this has kind of been something that's been very spiritual, and I find it to be very, it's something that needs to be approached with a lot of respect. Even if you don't completely understand all of it, it is still very important that when you're working with chakras, when you're working with energy in this particular way, do it with as much respect as possible, because you're talking about people's life force and the way that is flowing throughout their body. It's part of the cosmic everything. It is literally, because there are more chakras than just the 7 main ones that we're going to talk about. There are chakras going all the way, like, down below the root chakra, the base, into the earth. There is an earth chakra, and but there's also chakras going up into the universe through higher than just the crown chakra, which is the 7th chakra. So, and even outside of all of that, there are ideas that there are hundreds of different chakras within your body, like a network. But the 7 chakras that most people know about, and the ones that we're going to be talking about today, are just the key points within your own body where they align and where everything in your body feeds into it. So you're almost like a tree. Like, your body is a tree. And the 7 points of chakra that we're going to talk about is your trunk, the core of what you are, your body, your being. And then the other chakras.
Root to leaf, if I had to.
Root to leaf.
Yeah, if I had to go with the tree analogy, which is a good analogy.
But then the other hundreds of points of chakras in your body are kind of like the branchings out. So there are hundreds. And there are also chakras extending yourself, connecting you into the earth, and also chakras going out of you, above you, into the universe and the world itself as a whole. So it is more than just what most people know of just the 7 chakras.
So, if we're gonna stay on the tree thing, I think it's a good analogy. So if you're thinking about a tree, and the tree physically itself are your 7 chakras, like anything deeper than root would be, I guess, like the dirt where like nutrients and stuff are for the root, because it all travels up. Anything above it would probably be like the oxygen or something else that a tree is giving off.
The air, the clouds,
like, more higher stuff.
But it's also the idea of going up and outward just beyond the oxygen in the air. It's also the idea of connecting yourself to the universe as a whole, to the galaxy, going on and outward, because you're all part of the same thing. You're all part of this existence kind of thing. Like I said, there's so much to it, and it's so expansive. So for this purpose, the purposes of this video, we're going to narrow it down to just very basic, very introductory information about the 7 main chakras in your body, the 7 main points where certain energies connect, form and connect all the way up and down. So why don't we go ahead and get started on that? Let's start with the first chakra, which is the root chakra, the base chakra.
And so all these 7 line up in a perfect, sort of perfect straight line. It goes up your spine. I have heard where sometimes, mostly when things are not aligned right, that they can
wiggle and wobble and move
around. And then I don't remember where I heard this, but someone, either I knew or somebody attached, either family friend or something, for instance, I think their heart chakra was off center, and it wasn't because something was wrong with it. It just happened to not be on their
just
spine.
how their body had attuned.
So it can deviate. It is not common, and anytime you see a picture or they talk about where this is located, it's in a straight line on your spine.
And specifically for those that are not versed in chakras at all, when you think about chakras, think about it as like a little disc or a rotating ball of energy within a certain part of your body. So normally with the chakras, the 7 main ones start at the root of your spine, the very base of your spine, and it goes all the way up to the crown of your head. So the one that we're talking about, the root chakra, is basically a ball of energy at the base of your spine. The root chakra is normally considered, in the color scheme, is considered to be red, and it's normally associated with your base needs, your feelings of security and safety, your ideas that, like, if you are, it normally is connected with your ideas of, do you have shelter? Do you have access to food and water? Do you consider yourself to be physically safe in the environment that you are in?
Very base of Maslow's needs.
Very, very base of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So, a lot of time, just to be clear, whenever we're talking about chakras and people, any person can have an issue, a blockage, or something wonky going on with one of their chakras. Like for me, when I first started learning about chakras and when I first started trying to do work with my chakras, trying to understand my body better and my flow of energy, I found one of my key issues was with my root chakra. That's one that I've had issues with. I'd had issues with it for years. And it's only been within the last year or so that I've actually been able to break through some of that and start actually getting that in a more healthy flow.
Yeah, I was going to say, even when I was reading your stuff, root was always a big one. And I don't read for a lot of people, but out of everybody, there were some similarities, but yours was probably like the most stark as being a root issue. So at the time, I had better root stuff, and now my root is slowly getting worse. Actually.
Yeah, but your situation has changed to where it has affected your root chakra. So things that are happening in your life, in the way that you are, in your physical, mental, emotional state, will affect your chakras. It will affect how well or how blocked that energy center is, and how it connects with the rest of the chakras in your body. Because most people generally have at least, I'm going to say, 2 or 3 chakras that are just blocked.
Not doing the greatest.
The energy is not perfectly attuned or balanced in some way, just from natural things that are going on with your life. Like for me, If I'm having a chakra issue, it's normally either in my root, in my heart, or in my throat. And very few people have a very, very strong, clear, healthy energy of the crown. Just because of how that chakra is.
Yeah.
So, I think we went off on a tangent. Let's try
Little
and get back. So, basically, starts off with the first chakra, root chakra. It's at the base of the spine.
Base of the spine and pelvic floor.
And pelvic floor. It's normally red in energy. That's normally what is commonly...
It's basically an upside down rainbow. Because it starts
upside
here
down, yep.
and it goes up.
Basically Roy G. Biv.
Yeah.
So, is there anything else you wanted to talk about with the root?
No, it's your foundation.
It is your foundation. It is
pretty
your
much
core.
how to think about it.
So,
going back to if you have an issue with your root, like, it's kind of when you're thinking, I have an issue with my foundation, like, foundation of a house, so that's always something really important to, like, focus on and, like, try to make better, because it affects the rest of everything else.
It does. So, moving up. Second one, your second chakra is your sacral chakra. Normally, it's at the part of your spine that is in the same... It's
below your belly button.
It's below your belly button. Normally considered to be orange. The sacral chakra is not just like your sexual drive or your sexual energy, but it's also the creative energy center. It is your passion, your creativity, your drive and want to do things. It is kind of how I associate it.
I was gonna say, I did a reading for one of my other friends, and his orange was a little wonky. It wasn't quite bad, it wasn't quite good. And he was like, what do you think that means? And I didn't guess, but what I said is it seems like you're not fulfilled in, you want to do something business-wise, like a startup business or something, and he goes, that is scarily accurate. So, it could be creativity, not just in art mediums, basically, but in...
your expression of self.
Yeah, so fulfillment of yourself. So lack of or having it is pretty big right there.
Yeah. So, moving further up. So, right at the core of your being, right at the very center, if you were to cut yourself in half, like in the middle of the abdomen,
somewhere near your rib cage,
somewhere like right where your ribs start to converge, is the solar plexus chakra. This is normally yellow. This one is one that I really don't deal with a lot because it's one that I've never really had issue with. How would you describe the solar plexus chakra?
That one is a bit of a weird one because when I first started getting into crystals, actually, I got a citrine because it said it was good for that. And it was good for, like, health issues a little bit.
Yeah.
But when I was reading more about chakras, it was saying that one had a lot to do with also, like, self-esteem, kind of your self-worth almost.
Yeah, your sense of self-esteem, your sense of self-worth, or belonging in feeling comfortable and belonging in your skin, I guess. I also associate this chakra with your breath of life because it is your diaphragm. It is the thing that, you breathe in and you breathe out. So it's not only your self-worth and your self-esteem, but it's also your idea of being. Your right to take a breath in this world, in your own body. It is your sense of being comfortable in your skin. But I also associate it with the idea of happiness.
Pleasure to some extent.
But not physical pleasure. It's more of like a...
like what brings pleasure to your life. Like we said, 2 was your sexual stuff, if you want to think of that as a pleasure. This is different pleasure.
Yeah.
This is more like, what brings happiness to you,
Yeah, it's what brings sunlight to your life.
Yeah.
Is kind of how it's almost like having the sun in the center of you.
Is literally in the name. So, so that could also kind of go into you had mentioned breath, but the heat of oneself kind of is.
And honestly, I think that's one of the reasons why my solar plexus chakra has never really been it's always been the healthiest chakra for me, is the fact that a lot of what I do, I see it very, I associate energy and life and breath kind of in the same thing, and I use that a lot for just my daily. So I'm constantly flexing this chakra. I'm constantly working with the energy of this chakra just in my natural way of being, even before I started my witchy path. So I think that's also something that I've kind of noticed. The more that you work with the energy of a certain chakra, the better flow it has, and the healthier flow it has. The healthier connection. It's almost like flexing a muscle. So for some people, they're really good at, like, their sacral chakra is amazing just because of the way that they live their life and the way that they are constantly in tune with that energy, because if they're a very creative person or they're very in tune with their own sexual being, sexual nature, so certain people are better with certain chakras on their body. They're more naturally attuned just from the way that they are, the way that they are as a human being, and the way that where they pull and are constantly using their energy from into their life. Something just to kind of keep in mind. Is there anything more you want to say about the solar before we move on up?
No.
Okay. So next one is going to be right here, the heart.
And then again, it's in a straight line, so it's not where your heart is, it's in the center of your chest. Because you're lining it up with your spine, and your heart is obviously not over here.
Yeah. But the heart chakra is normally considered to be green. It really is your emotional center, your emotional energy base. It really does talk about, like, your ideas, your feelings of love and relationship, of partnership, of self-love. It really is pertaining to, are you a healthy emotional being? Is kind of how I see some of it.
I see it sometimes like that. I feel like I just feel like sometimes people can be emotionally healthy but also have a weak heart chakra. Because I just feel like some people are just, I don't know. It does go together, but I feel like it's...
I feel like the big distinction with this is you can be a very emotional person without being very in touch with your emotions.
Yeah, I can kind of see that, yeah.
So
and then, for instance, every single person I've read for has had a weird fourth chakra.
But I think that this is the most diverse energy for most people. Like, when you're looking at people, like, if you lined a whole bunch of people up and you went and looked at their fourth chakra, I feel like that's the most diverse energy amongst people.
For sure.
Just because we all experience and understand emotions in a slightly different way, from a slightly different lens because of our own past experiences. So when it comes to the energy of the heart chakra, I'm trying to figure out what the best way to say this is. Y'all are going to think I'm crazy, but I just lost it. Like, it just went right out of my mind. Like a little bubble burst.
I guess the best way I can kind of, just from what I've read, is, this is going to sound really corny, but how hurt have you been? Because, like, I've had friends with bad relationships. I've had friends with, this stuff stems back to their childhood. Sense of abandonment, either emotionally or physically, from parents.
Some of that also... is connected very heavily with the root chakra. I find that the heart and the root chakra are very, they almost are, they're
more connected than the stuff in between.
There's a very direct correlation sometimes between the root chakra and the heart chakra, because a lot of the way that you associate and deal with and look at your emotions stems from your root of how you built yourself up, or the experiences.
Yeah, your security.
Yeah.
So if your security as a child was shoddy at best, unless you've built something really solid for yourself, it's still gonna be wobbly, and that happens even if people, they're like, oh, well, I'm not where I grew up, I made a name for myself, I did all this stuff for myself, like, my parents aren't who I am. There's still somewhere in there, like, a lack of something, even if you can fix yourself, obviously. You can't just, mom and dad are they might, say sorry, or they might explain what happened, or you might never get some kind of answer. And then what are you going to do? Just wait till something happens? You're going to be stuck in a sad place for a long time. So that's honestly, like I said, it's kind of like a really terrible way of looking at it, but just from my own experience, it's literally, when and how bad were you hurt? And have you gone through that stuff? Because, for instance, my 4th chakra was all over the place when I first started getting into chakra stuff, and it started kind of getting better later. Like, now it's probably a lot better than it was back then. So, because I have less drama in my life, in that sense.
Well, that, and I think when you're talking about things that pertain to the heart chakra, I think that's also where a lot of our shadow lies.
Yeah.
Not going any deeper into that. That's just kind of an observation that I have to me from my own experience. So, moving on up. Next one. The throat.
Right there. Kind of where, if you're a dude, Adam's apple's location.
Yep. Right in the center of the neck. Throat chakra, I think y'all can pretty much kind of guess, but it's really about your communication. Like your own voice. Do you feel like you're being heard, or are you speaking your own truth? I find that speaking your own truth, it has a lot to do with how healthy of a throat chakra you have. And when I say speaking your own truth, I'm just not talking about you open your mouth and you never lie. I'm talking about, like, something more deeper than just not lying. It's more...
This happens a lot at work, I think. Because anytime I've read for somebody, it tends to be, you can't tell your boss certain things because they're your boss. You don't want to get fired. Or even with family, can you be yourself with them? Friends and family, it's like, are you, or do you wear masks? And
I think that's probably one of the reasons why my throat chakra was really difficult, because I only started being more honest with who I was as a human being more recently, within the last few years. Not only to other people, but speaking my truth to myself as well. And I think only since I started that is when my throat chakra started becoming becoming healthier. So that's the big thing with the throat chakra, is not only being honest, but speaking your truth. Having a healthy communication with people around you, but also within yourself. I think has a lot to do with the throat chakra. And normally the throat chakra, if I haven't mentioned before, is blue. Normally it's a blue energy, a lighter blue energy.
Yeah, lighter to like medium bluish, because next one's more indigo dark blue. But yeah, that about wraps up the throat.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be honest.
So, moving on up, what is this?
Third eye.
Yeah, this is the 6th chakra. So the 6th chakra is the third eye. It's normally right between, like right here to right between.
Yeah, because I've seen,
between your
technically
eyebrows.
When I read it says it's right between your eyebrows. So like for me, my eyebrows are probably a little lower placed, so mine's gonna be like right there. But I have seen other diagrams where it's more center of forehead, too.
Which I think some of that is also a variation, because I feel that this energy is a little bit more, like, it kind of sits differently on other people. Depending on just you naturally, who you are, how your energy is. So, the third eye is a little bit harder for me to describe.
I was gonna say, the last 2 chakras are always a little weirder for people, and
because we're starting to get out of the realm of the material and more into the realm of how your body connects with the higher plane of existence, your higher self, your higher being. So things get a little bit harder to describe in a
concrete way.
In a concrete, yes. It's much more abstract when it comes to these particular, these last 2 chakras of the body.
The way I found it, because I was looking for, because we said this is supposed to be a very condensed video, and I was trying to find basically keywords. Keywords that I saw a lot were intuition and foresight.
Yes.
So probably the more direct vocabulary words we can use for this one.
See, this is the interesting part, because when I think of third eye, I almost think of like the idea of, yes, your intuition, but you're knowing of things without understanding how you know. Like, there are just certain things that you know or understand in your core being. And I feel like that has a lot to do with your third eye. It's also like your gut feelings.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I feel like intuition's kind of lost some of that, because I think intuition is supposed to mean all that, but now it's like, it's almost, intuition nowadays is kind of a fluffy word, unfortunately, I feel, where we're like, oh, trust your intuition, but like, it's said so much that I feel like it's almost lost some of its depth. Because intuition is supposed to be a deep, kind of, almost spiritual, magical thing, and nowadays it's just like, oh, it's your gut feeling, and I don't know, like, I know that's still deep, but I feel like people have just, I don't want to say cheapened it, I just feel like it's just less than it's meant to be, when we think about it as a word.
And I'm gonna say something that I don't know if other people will agree with me on, but it's just kind of the way that I view the third chakra. I don't know, this may be controversial. I've never really talked to anybody else about my feelings of this. I feel like young children have a healthier third eye, like a
oh yeah, for sure,
third eye chakra than most adults, because I've had this, and I've heard a lot of other people talk about it, but have y'all ever known a child that seems to be more in tune with the world around them than they really have any right to be at that age, or they seem to know things that they shouldn't or wouldn't be able to know on their own.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that very much has to do with your third eye. And so for me, it seems to be just naturally that the younger you are naturally attuned to your third eye. And it's only with the building of reality as you get older and your connections with the real world and the material that I feel like that starts like closing down. And I feel like
it's almost attached to imagination.
It is. It very much is, I think.
So yeah, it's like, I feel, because I was reading something, and this lady was talking about how she found some like empty boxes, and she was wondering if she could still play Fort. And she crawled in and she goes, it just wasn't the same anymore. Like, I couldn't see anything anymore. And I was like, oh, I'm about to cry again. But I think that's kind of part of it, right? Because I think small children especially have, like, a sense of magic. Really. Like, what we think of as magic. Not, casting spells, waving wands, and all this other just fantasy magic. But I feel like there's more of a earth magic. Yeah. Especially when you're younger, where you can see things, sense things, know things that, like you said, either aren't there, other people can't see them, adults don't look at it the same way.
Yeah.
And then it just starts fading out when,
pretty much.
Real life happens.
When I was very, very young, I'm talking like 5 or so, I used to be able to know that people were going to come to visit before they came. Like, I would be playing at my great-grandmother's house, and I would stop, and I would turn to her, and I was like, Aunt so-and-so is going to come to visit. She's like, no, they're not. They're out of town. I was like, okay. And I would turn back and I would go back to playing. And like an hour or so later, ding dong. Guess who it was? Turns out they had gotten back in town earlier than they had expected. Like, things like that. And I don't think this is uncommon with younger children. But maybe not exactly in that way, but in all sorts of different ways. Fantastical and wonderful ways. They are so much more connected to the higher. And I feel like this connection to the higher or the other is really what the third eye chakra is all about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can dig it.
So yeah.
And last but not least
is the crown. We're talking about literally on the top of your head like you had a crown sitting on you.
So like this. Yeah, I've seen it both ways, where it's physically on the top of your head, and I've seen it where it's floating somewhere about here on your head.
Almost like a halo.
Mm-hmm. Kind of like if you had a crown just floating above your head, but I've seen it where it's physically there, and I've had it where it's just above.
Color-wise, this is commonly purple, although I have seen in a few instances where it is white. Although, I think purple is probably the more common. Mm-hmm. So, the crown chakra is normally, I think, your connection to the greater universe or to your idea of divinity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the collective consciousness.
collective consciousness.
Or is it collective unconscious? Which one is it?
I would say more the collective consciousness than the collective unconscious. I feel like the collective unconscious lies a little bit more with the third eye chakra, just from the connection to other, because I do kind of put that in the same realm as the other. Where I think the collective consciousness, this idea and knowledge that you are part of the greater cosmos, you are part of a living, breathing, connected thing. I think that understanding and knowledge is really what goes into your crown chakra. And we mentioned this earlier in the video, but the crown chakra seems to be very, very difficult chakra for people to open, to have connected to. It seems to be one of the hardest ones to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
Which actually, I'm going to rewind just a moment, and because this reminded me. A lot of people, there are all sorts of videos and people talking about opening your third eye chakra. I would not suggest that unless you have done significant work with your chakras and you are moderately healthy and aligned with everything, because it can be scary, unsettling, and sometimes possibly dangerous for you to try to open your third eye chakra when it is not prepared or when your energy is not aligned and healthy. People have talked about almost like, think of like the scariest acid trip you can imagine. Or they start seeing things that just downright unsettle them because they are not meant to have their third eye open at that point, and they practically forced it open.
Yeah. I feel that unless you... I feel like having open chakras is important eventually, not all at once, but I also feel like it might not necessarily be for everyone. Like, my 6 and 7 chakras aren't the greatest, and I honestly don't super feel like I'm missing out on a lot, because I don't feel like I need that in my life right now.
Okay, I'm gonna show my nerdiness again. Any of you that were 90s kids, if you watched a show called Yu Yu Hakusho, he's the short little guy with the spiky black hair.
Yeah.
And he has a whole bunch of eyes that are closed all over his body. But he has this one that he mostly keeps covered up for good reason. And it's really only when it is absolutely necessary and he's run out of options that this one comes open. It's almost kind of like that idea of everyone has a third eye chakra. It may not be completely open. It may be mostly closed or almost completely shut off. That doesn't shut off your connection to your intuition, the process or what goes on with the third chakra. Even with it almost completely closed, you are still going to get hits and the ability to use your intuition and your connection. So you do not have to open your third eye in order to work with this energy or have it work for you in a way that is healthy.
Yeah, you can have a healthy higher chakra and not be...
So I think there's a misunderstanding there. And I feel like this is something that is so powerful that it is something that you have to learn to respect somewhat more than some of the other chakras, because
there's more to it.
There's more to it. And it is a very powerful thing, because even with it closed, you can still work with it and it can still do wondrous things. So sometimes forcing it open, you're basically like everything comes rushing in. Rather than sometimes it's meant to only be a glow. Yeah. Rather than a raging waterfall.
I was going to say, because every person I've read, it's not necessarily a block or something wrong with it. It's just kind of like I get a nothing answer instead of like a yes, work on it, or no, it's good. It's more of a meh.
It's more of a this is not a concern.
It's more like a
And I think that it's
and I've gotten that for every single person I've read, because I don't happen to know anybody that works in other realms, quite honestly. You're probably the closest. If I had to pick out of everybody I know, you're the closest
Really?
that's done any other realm stuff.
Oh.
But
Well, even then, most of what I do is I like to walk around the subconscious.
yeah, but like I said, you're the person that I know that's the closest to any of that, which
Yeah.
isn't saying a whole lot because
No.
you don't go that deep.
No, I'm a wee little baby.
So that's what I'm saying though. But out of everybody I've read for, you have gone the deepest, which
Yeah.
again isn't very deep.
No.
So
And I'm not ready to go that deep, and I know that about myself. And I
Yeah.
think that's a very healthy thing for people to learn very early on. Is you don't have to completely open the door in order to be able to dabble. Or
and if
understand something.
and if I had to say something, you'd probably go to 7 and have that also be something connected to you without, because a lot of times when you're looking at 1 through 5,
Uh-huh.
you want 1 to be in a good spot before you go to 2, and 2 before you go to 3, etc., so forth. But I feel like 7 is still something that is workable without this being fully there.
Yeah.
Because I think you can still be connected to higher
It's connected.
without this going on.
I feel like it's connected. I think of a lot of things in the idea of electrical circuits. It may be connected to the rest of your circuitry, but I feel like in some people there is a bypass where it has an either or it is completely shut off, and it's sometimes you're built that way for a reason. Like your spiritual being is just built like that because that's how you are and how you're meant to be. So I don't think that necessarily the third eye has to be completely open and connected in order for you to access the crown, because I feel like the crown is something that just connects you to the world as a whole. Where the third eye is connected to the other, but not everybody is meant to work with the other.
Very true.
Something to think about. Is there anything else that you want to talk about in regards to the crown? Because I don't do a lot with the crown. I don't work a lot with the crown. I try to... I'm flexing my energy when it comes to working with my idea of the cosmic all and the divine, because, my deity. And, I very much like the idea of the collective all. But mine, when I work with the collective all or the collective cosmic, I seem to go much more primal. I go deeper than... I seem to go down rather than up. Without being able to explain it much better than that. Sometimes words fail.
Yeah, no, I can see that. But yeah, so, not really, because I feel like eventually we'll get to other stuff in other videos, because a lot of stuff that's kind of floating in my brain are just things that we don't need to get too into right now.
Which you had mentioned when you try to read people's aura, the crown is, for the most part, rarely ever.
Yeah, like I said, 6 and 7 for the most part are mess. I've gotten more wobbly, like, it's kind of there for 7 than 6. 6 tends to just be, like I said, it's typically off, but not damaged. There's a distinct difference between the two, because I don't think, like I said, 1 through 5 are different than 6 and 7.
Because material,
yeah,
and then the abstract. Different
so,
plane.
Yeah, totally different stuff, because 4, if it's closed off, that's typically damaged.
Yeah.
That's typically a very damaged chakra if it's something closed off, because it's it's to protect you, but that's also leading to other stuff. Not getting too into it, but I'm just kind of trying to explain this very briefly. But yeah, so I've had, like I said, 6 and 7 where they're closed, but not damaged closed. They are...
Yeah, they just haven't been accessed, or at this point in your journey, they are not necessary for the work that you are doing.
Yeah, pretty much. So it's not a bad thing.
Yeah, it's not negative.
Yeah. So, no, that was about it.
Okay. So, hopefully this has been beneficial. We are trying to keep things as basic as possible when we're talking about the general idea of chakras and how kind of the basic 7 work, because we don't want to get too deep, because it literally is, you go down the rabbit hole and it branches out. And that's why we're going to do a few videos here in the future where we'll pick a chakra and go a little bit more in depth, but even then we're not even going to be brushing, Yeah,
we're probably just going to have like little suggestions or, things to keep around the house if you're looking to work with it or something. It's not going to be like I said, if you want real good information, get some books, go to your library, go online, do reading, you know, look at the Sanskrit stuff. If you got a mind to do that, that's going to be a lot of work, but take a look at that stuff. But yeah, for sure, this is going to be very just basic stuff.
So that you understand what we're talking about when we've been suggesting in past videos, we're like, oh, this rock works very well with the root chakra, things like that, because there are certain rocks that their vibration is already naturally attuned to that particular chakra, and so working with that stone can help you get familiar or work with, or you know, with that energy, help you connect to that energy, because for some people it is harder to connect with chakra energies than others. Like we knew someone, she knows someone that he was a natural, where he could sit and meditate and he could feel the connections and blockages in his chakras without being taught or without any significant time spent. He just intuitively knew and could tell and could see.
Jealous.
I am slightly jealous too, but he's a very intuitive person. He works very well with that kind of energy and stuff, just naturally as a human being. So I wasn't all that surprised, but yes, I was a little jealous, because that normally takes like decades to learn how to do.
Yeah, I just invited them to this one thing, and it had been the first time he'd ever done anything. It's like, oh yeah, he basically had visions, and I'm like, what?
Like I said, some people are more naturally connected and able to sense their chakras if they try than others. So, but yeah, I hope this has been beneficial. I hope that you learned something, or at least enjoyed it, you know, listening to us ramble and talk about things.
Yeah.
And please, 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 please stay tuned for our pendulum video that's going to be coming up in the next few weeks, because Alex is going to use, she has a stone generator with stones for each associated chakra, and she uses that. You basically, like, I would put in my hand.
Don't go too hard into it, woman.
Yeah. So she uses it to read your chakras to tell if there are blockages or openings. She'll go further into that in the future video. I'm really excited. Please stay tuned for that. Please.
And then we have another video to go after that. That's gonna be a craft video.
Yay.
So hopefully people like that one too. All right, and we're done.
All right.
Have a nice day, y'all.
Thank you. Bye.
Toodaloo.